One rainy night on a deserted highway, a mechanic stops to help a stranded motorist with a flat tire. He refuses payment, saying only, "Just help someone else someday." Little does he know he's just helped basketball legend Michael Jordan, or that by tomorrow he'll lose everything he owns. But when Michael Jordan discovers the tragic turn of events, his response will change not just one man's life, but countless others. This is how a simple act of kindness in the worst conditions can lead to extraordinary generosity that no one could have imagined. Rain pounded against Marcus Williams's old Ford truck as he drove home on the empty highway. The windshield wipers squeaked back and forth, fighting against the downpour. Lightning flashed across the dark sky, followed by a deep rumble of thunder. Marcus yawned and rubbed his tired eyes. It had been a long day at Joe's auto shop, 12 hours of fixing cars, changing oil, and replacing worn-out parts. His hands were rough and his back ached, but he kept going. He had to. His 10-year-old daughter Lily was waiting for him at home. "Just 15 more minutes," Marcus whispered to himself. "Then I can kick off these boots and relax." The truck's headlights cut through the rain, showing the empty road ahead. Most people were smart enough to stay home on a night like this. The radio weatherman had called it the worst storm of the year. As Marcus rounded a curve, he noticed flashing hazard lights up ahead. A car was pulled over on the shoulder of the road. Through the rain, he could see it was much fancier than his old truck, some kind of luxury sports car that probably cost more than he made in 5 years. Marcus slowed down as he approached. He could see a tall figure standing beside the car, looking at a flat tire. The man wore expensive clothes that were getting soaked in the rain. For a moment, Marcus thought about driving past. He was tired. He was hungry. Lily's babysitter, their elderly neighbor, Mrs. Chen, would be waiting to go home, and rich people in fancy cars usually had roadside assistance to call. But something made Marcus pull over. His mom had always taught him to help others when they needed it. "That's what makes the world work," she would say. Marcus parked his truck, grabbed his toolbox from the back, and pulled his jacket over his head as he jogged toward the stranded car. "Need some help?" Marcus called over the sound of the rain. The tall man turned, looking surprised to see someone stopping. "My tire blew out," he said, pointing to the flat. "I was trying to change it, but this rain isn't making it easy." Marcus nodded. Even in the poor light and rain, he could tell this was one expensive car. The man was tall and athletic-looking, but Marcus didn't pay much attention to his face. He was focused on the problem. "I'm a mechanic," Marcus said. "Let me take a look." The man stepped back, giving Marcus room to work. Marcus knelt by the flat tire, not caring that his jeans were getting soaked. This was just another job to him. "Do you have a spare?" Marcus asked. The man nodded and pointed to the trunk. "Everything's in there, but I'm not sure where the jack points are on this model." Marcus smiled. "I can figure it out." For the next 20 minutes, Marcus worked in the pouring rain. He found the proper jack points, lifted the car safely, and removed the flat tire. His experienced hands worked quickly despite the weather. The whole time, the tall man stood nearby, occasionally holding a flashlight to help Marcus see better. "You're good at this," the man said. Marcus shrugged as he tightened the last lug nut on the spare tire. "Been fixing cars since I was 16. My dad taught me. Then I went to trade school." "I'm lucky you came along," the man said. "Could have been stuck here for hours." Marcus lowered the car back to the ground and collected his tools. "No problem. Just make sure to get a proper tire soon. That spare isn't meant for long drives." The rain had slowed a little, but both men were soaked. The tall man reached into his pocket and pulled out a wallet. "Please, let me pay you for your help," he said, offering what looked like several $100 bills. Marcus shook his head and held up his hand. "No need for that," just helping out." "I insist," the man said. "You saved me a lot of trouble." "Really? It's fine," Marcus said firmly. "Just help someone else someday." The man looked at Marcus with a curious expression, then slowly put his wallet away. "Thank you," he said simply. Marcus nodded, picked up his toolbox, and headed back to his truck. He didn't see the man watching him drive away, a thoughtful look on his face. Back in his truck, Marcus turned the heater up high, trying to dry off a bit. His clothes were soaked, his hands were dirty, and he was now even more tired than before. But somehow, he felt good. He had done the right thing. Marcus didn't know the name of the man he had helped. He had no idea he had just changed a tire for Michael Jordan, one of the most famous basketball players in history. And he certainly couldn't have guessed how this simple act of kindness on a stormy night would change his life forever. As Marcus drove the final few miles home, the rain began to let up. He thought about Lily and hoped she had finished her homework. He was looking forward to hearing about her day at school. Little did Marcus know that in less than 24 hours, his whole world would come crashing down around him. Little did Marcus know that in less than 24 hours, his whole world would come crashing down around him. Marcus pulled into the parking lot of Oakwood Apartments, a plain 3-story building on Chicago's west side. It wasn't fancy, but it had been home since Lily was born. He parked his truck in his usual spot and hurried to apartment 2B. When he opened the door, he found Mrs. Chen sitting on the couch watching a game show. The elderly woman lived next door and watched Lily when Marcus worked late. "Sorry I'm late, Mrs. Chen," Marcus said, shaking rainwater from his jacket. "Got caught in the storm and stopped to help someone with a flat tire." Mrs. Chen smiled and gathered her knitting. "No problem, Marcus. Lily finished her homework and ate the chicken soup I brought over. She's reading in her room." "You're a lifesaver," Marcus said, walking her to the door. "I don't know what we'd do without you." After Mrs. Chen left, Marcus knocked gently on Lily's bedroom door. "Hey, basketball star, can I come in?" "Dad!" Lily looked up from her book, her face brightening. At 10 years old, she had her mother's warm brown eyes and curly hair. "You're all wet." "Yeah, got caught in the rain," Marcus said, sitting on the pihom edge of her bed. "How was school today?" Lily launched into a story about her day, especially basketball practice. "Coach says I'm getting better at free throws. Maybe I'll be as good as Michael Jordan someday." Marcus smiled. Basketball was Lily's passion. Her bedroom walls were covered with posters of basketball stars, with Michael Jordan front and center. A shelf displayed her growing collection of trophies and medals. "Keep practicing and you might be even better," Marcus said, though he felt a pang in his chest. Maria should be here to see their daughter grow up. 3 years had passed since cancer took his wife, but the empty space she left still ached. Maria had been the family's sunshine, warm, bright, and full of life. Now it was just Marcus and Lily, doing their best to keep going. "Did you eat dinner?" Lily asked, sounding more like a parent than a child. "Not yet. Think I'll heat up some of Mrs. Chen's soup." Marcus stood up. "You should get ready for bed. It's already past 9. In the kitchen, Marcus found a note from Mrs. Chen attached to a container of soup. "The sink is leaking again. Called the building manager, but no answer." Marcus sighed as he looked under the sink. Sure enough, water was dripping from the pipes. He grabbed a bucket and made a mental note to fix it this weekend. It was always something in this old apartment: leaky pipes, broken heaters, cracked windows. The rent was cheap, but the problems were endless. After eating his soup, Marcus sat at the kitchen table with a pile of bills. Rent was due next week. Lily needed new basketball shoes. The truck needed repairs. There never seemed to be enough money, no matter how many hours he worked at the auto shop. "Dad?" Lily stood in the doorway in her pajamas, hugging the teddy bear Maria had given her. "Can you tuck me in?" Marcus pushed the bills aside. "Of course, sweetie." In her room, Lily climbed into bed, and Marcus pulled the covers up. "Dad, you look worried. Is everything okay?" "Everything's fine," Marcus lied, forcing a smile. "Just tired from work." "Tell me about the person you helped tonight," Lily said. Marcus described the stranded driver and the flat tire. "It was pouring rain, but I couldn't just drive past someone who needed help." Like Mom always said, Lily nodded. Good things happen to good people. It was Maria's favorite saying. "That's right," Marcus said, though sometimes he wondered if it was true. Maria had been the best person he knew, and cancer still took her. "The man tried to pay me, but I told him to just help someone else someday instead." Lily smiled proudly. "That's what Mom would have done?" "Yeah, she would have." Marcus kissed her forehead. "Good night, Lily Bear. Love you to the moon and back." "Love you to the stars and beyond," Lily replied, their nightly ritual. After Lily fell asleep, Marcus took a quick shower and changed into dry clothes. He checked the apartment windows to make sure they were locked against the storm, which had picked up again. Rain lashed against the glass, and thunder rumbled in the distance. In the living room, Marcus looked at the framed photo of Maria on the bookshelf. She was laughing in the picture, her arms around both Marcus and a 5-year-old Lily at the beach. "I'm trying my best, Maria," he whispered. "I hope it's enough." Marcus stretched out on the couch, too tired to make it to his bedroom. His muscles ached from the long day, and his mind was heavy with worries. The leak under the sink, the bills piling up, the truck making that strange noise. But there were good things too. Lily was healthy and happy. They had a roof over their heads. And today, he'd helped someone who needed it. As Marcus drifted off, to sleep, rain drumming against the windows, he had no idea that in just a few hours, the life he'd carefully rebuilt after Maria's death would be completely shattered. No idea that the simple act of changing a stranger's tire would become the lifeline he and Lily would desperately need. No idea that the simple act of changing a stranger's tire would become the lifeline he and Lily would desperately need. The blaring sound of alarms jolted Marcus awake. For a moment, he was confused, thinking it was his morning alarm clock. But this sound was different, louder, more urgent. Then he smelled it. Smoke. Lily. Marcus leapt from the couch, suddenly wide awake. The apartment was hazy with smoke, and the hallway outside his door was filled with the sounds of people shouting and running. The building fire alarm screamed its warning. Marcus raced to Lily's room and found her sitting up in bed, eyes wide with fear. "Dad, what's happening?" she asked, coughing. "We need to go. Right now." Marcus grabbed her winter coat from the hook on her door and wrapped it around her shoulders. Buildings on fire. Stay low where there's less smoke. He took her hand and they crouched down, moving quickly toward the front door. Marcus placed his palm against it, not too hot. He opened it carefully and saw neighbors hurrying toward the stairwell. "Everyone out!" the building manager shouted, banging on doors. "Fire started on the first floor. Move quickly!" Marcus and Lily joined the stream of people heading downstairs. The smoke was thicker here, making their eyes water and throats burn. Lily clutched her teddy bear with one hand and held on to Marcus with the other. "Almost there," Marcus encouraged her as they reached the second-floor landing. Outside, the night air was cold but clear. Residents of the Oakwood Apartments huddled together in the parking lot, watching as flames began to show through first-floor windows. Fire trucks arrived, sirens wailing, red lights flashing against the dark buildings. "Is everyone out?" a firefighter asked the building manager. "I think so," the manager replied, looking at the gathered crowd. "Fire started in 1C. Looks like electrical." Marcus held Lily close as they watched firefighters battle the flames. The old building's wiring had always been problematic. How many times had Marcus reported flickering lights and power surges to the building manager? Mrs. Chen appeared beside them, her silver hair loose around her shoulders instead of in its usual neat bun. "Thank goodness you're both safe," she said, patting Lily's arm. More neighbors joined their small group. Everyone had escaped, but they all watched with sinking hearts as water and smoke damaged everything they owned. "Dad, our stuff," Lily whispered, her voice trembling. "Mom's picture." "It's just stuff," Marcus said, trying to sound brave. "We got out safely. That's what matters." But even as he said it, Marcus felt the weight of the disaster. The photo of Maria at the beach, Lily's basketball trophies, their clothes, furniture, and the small savings he kept in a box in his closet. Everything they owned was in that apartment. By dawn, the fire was out, but the damage was severe. The first floor was gutted by flames, and water had flooded the second and third floors. A fire marshal approached the gathered residents. "I'm sorry, but no one can go back inside right now. The structure isn't safe," he explained. "The Red Cross is setting up at the community center 2 blocks over. They'll help with temporary housing and necessities." Marcus nodded numbly. He looked down at Lily, still in her pajamas under her coat, clutching her teddy bear, the only possession she had managed to save. At the community center, Red Cross volunteers handed out blankets, water, and information. They set up cots for those with nowhere else to go. "We can stay here tonight," Marcus told Lily, as a volunteer showed them to 2 cots in the corner. "Tomorrow, we'll figure things out." Lily nodded bravely, but Marcus could see the tears she was fighting back. While Lily rested, Marcus stepped outside to call Joe's auto shop. He was supposed to be at work in an hour, but that was impossible now. "Joe's Auto," a voice answered. "Hey, it's Marcus. There was a fire in my apartment building last night. Everyone's safe, but we lost everything. I won't be able to make it in today." There was a long pause on the other end. "Listen, Marcus," Joe finally said, his voice uncomfortable. "There's something I need to tell you. The shop's been sold. New owner is taking over next week." Marcus felt his stomach drop. "What does that mean for me?" "New guy's bringing in his own crew. I tried to talk him into keeping you, but—" Joe trailed off. "I'm sorry, Marcus. Yesterday was your last day." Marcus leaned against the wall, stunned. In less than 12 hours, he had lost his home, all his possessions, and now his job. "I understand," he managed to say. "Thanks for everything, Joe." He hung up and stared at his phone. How would he tell Lily? How would they survive? When he returned to the cot area, he found Lily sitting up, looking at her teddy bear. The bear's fur was smoky, and one eye was loose. "Dad," she said quietly, "remember when Mom would say that sometimes things get worse before they get better?" Marcus nodded, his throat tight. "I think this is one of those times," Lily said, trying to sound grown up. Marcus sat beside her and pulled her close. "You're right, Lily Bear. This is one of those times." But as they sat together in the crowded community center, surrounded by their displaced neighbors, Marcus had no idea how things could possibly get better. But as they sat together in the crowded community center, Surrounded by their displaced neighbors, Marcus had no idea how things could possibly get better. 1 week later, Marcus sat on the edge of a sagging bed in the Moonlight Motel, a worn-down place on the outskirts of Chicago. The emergency assistance money had paid for a week here, but they had only 3 days left before that ran out. Lily was at school. Thankfully, her school was understanding about the situation, and one of the teachers had donated some clothes and supplies. The school counselor had even arranged for Lily to get free lunch, small kindnesses that Marcus appreciated more than he could say. He stared at his phone, scrolling through job listings he'd already applied for. 27 applications sent out, 3 interviews, no offers. Too experienced, one manager had told him. You'd get bored with this position. We're looking for someone with more formal education, another had said. We'll keep your application on file, the third had promised, which Marcus knew meant nothing. Outside the motel window, his old truck sat silent in the parking lot. It had finally given up 2 days ago, the engine making a terrible grinding noise before dying completely. A mechanic without a working vehicle? The irony wasn't lost on Marcus. He'd had to use the last of their emergency cash to buy bus passes. Now, Lily had to wake up an hour earlier to catch the bus to school, and Marcus had to navigate public transportation to get to job interviews. His phone buzzed with a text from Mrs. Chen. How are you and Lily doing? Many neighbors found new apartments. Building owner offering small compensation for damaged items. Marcus sighed. The compensation wouldn't be nearly enough to replace everything they'd lost, and without a steady job, no landlord would rent to him anyway. He texted back, We're hanging in there. Please let me know if you hear of any jobs. The room felt stuffy and small. 2 beds, a bathroom with a dripping shower, and a mini fridge that hummed too loudly. Their few rescued items and donated clothes were piled in the corner. The Red Cross had given them some toiletries and gift cards for food, but those were running low too. Marcus opened his wallet and counted the money again. $83. Not enough for another week at the motel. Not enough for much of anything. He looked at the toolbox sitting by the door. His professional tools that he'd kept in the truck, the only things of value they still owned. He'd been hoping to use them for work. But now, 2 hours later, Marcus walked out of a pawn shop with $400 in his pocket and an empty feeling in his stomach. The tools had been his father's originally. It felt like selling a piece of himself. But the money would buy them another week at the motel and food to eat. 1 more week to find a job, any job. As Marcus waited at the bus stop, his phone rang. It was Coach Turner, Lily's basketball coach. Hey Marcus, just checking in. How are you two holding up? We're okay, Marcus lied, taking it day by day. Listen, we've got practice tonight and Saturday morning. I'd be happy to pick Lily up and bring her home. Marcus hesitated. He didn't like asking for help, but Lily loved basketball. It was the one normal thing left in her life. That would be great, Coach. Thank you. The team misses her. She's our best point guard, you know. After hanging up, Marcus felt a mix of gratitude and shame. People were being kind, but he hated being a charity case. He was supposed to provide for Lily, not rely on others to help them. When Lily returned from school that afternoon, she tried to sound cheerful as she told Marcus about her day, but he could see the shadows under her eyes and the way her smile didn't quite reach them. Coach Turner's going to pick you up for practice tonight, Marcus told her. For the first time that week, Lily's face lit up with genuine excitement. Really? I can go to practice? Yep. I figured you'd want to keep up with your jump shots. Lily hugged him tightly. Thanks, Dad. I'll show Coach I've been practicing my free throws. After she left with Coach Turner, Marcus sat alone in the quiet motel room. He opened the mini fridge and took out a sandwich he'd bought at the gas station. Dinner for one. That night, after Lily was asleep, Marcus sat by the window watching cars pass on the highway. He thought about Maria and how she'd always been the optimistic one. Good things happen to good people, she would say whenever times were tough. Marcus wanted to believe that. He really did. But sitting in a rundown motel room, jobless, with their belongings in a pawn shop and their home gone, it was hard to see what good could possibly come next. Tomorrow, he had 2 more job interviews, one at a fast food restaurant and another at a warehouse. Neither would pay enough to get them a decent apartment, but it would be something. Anything was better than nothing. Marcus rubbed his tired eyes and looked over at Lily, peaceful in sleep with her teddy bear clutched to her chest. She deserved so much better than this. "I'm trying, Maria," he whispered into the darkness. "I don't know what else to do, but I'm trying." As he finally climbed into bed, Marcus couldn't know that miles away, in a luxury penthouse overlooking the Chicago skyline, someone was thinking about the kind mechanic who had helped him in the rain and refused payment. Someone who was about to change everything. Someone who was about to change everything. The next morning, Marcus woke to the sound of his phone ringing. He fumbled for it, wondering if it was one of the places he'd applied to. The screen showed an unknown number. "Hello?" he answered, his voice still rough from sleep. "Is this Marcus Williams?" a woman's crisp, professional voice asked. "Yes, that's me." "Mr. Williams, my name is Diana Johnson. I'm a personal assistant to someone who would like to meet with you today, if possible." Marcus sat up, confused. "Personal assistant? Who do you work for?" "I'm afraid I'm not at liberty to say over the phone," Diana replied. "My employer is a private person, but he's very interested in speaking with you." Marcus frowned. This sounded suspicious. "Look, I don't mean to be rude, but I'm not really in a position to go meet with strangers right now." "I understand your hesitation," Diana said. "Perhaps I can explain a bit more. My employer was in a difficult situation recently. A flat tire. During that big storm last week, someone stopped to help him, refused payment, and then drove off before he could properly thank them." Marcus's heart skipped a beat. The man with the fancy car in the rain. "That was me," he said slowly. "But how did you find me?" "My employer has resources," Diana said simply. "He's been trying to track you down to thank you properly. When he learned about your current situation, he became even more determined to meet." Marcus felt a mix of emotions: surprise that the stranger had sought him out, wariness about what he might want, and a tiny flicker of hope. What exactly does he want? He'd prefer to discuss that in person. "We can send a car to pick you up this morning, while your daughter is at school. The meeting shouldn't take more than an hour." Marcus glanced at Lily, still asleep in the other bed. He had a job interview at the warehouse at 2 o'clock. Whatever this was, it couldn't hurt to hear what the man had to say. "Okay," he finally agreed. "I can meet him this morning." "Excellent," Diana sounded pleased. "A car will arrive at your location at 10 o'clock. The driver's name is Keith. He'll bring you to our office downtown." After hanging up, Marcus sat on the edge of his bed, wondering if he'd made a smart decision. Who was this mystery man? And why was he so interested in talking to Marcus? When Lily woke up, Marcus helped her get ready for school and walked her to the bus stop. "I've got a meeting this morning," he told her, "about a possible job." This wasn't exactly true, but he didn't want to get her hopes up about something he didn't understand himself. "That's great, Dad." Lily hugged him before climbing on the bus. "Good luck." "Thanks, basketball star. I'll see you after school." At exactly 10 o'clock, a sleek black car pulled up outside the motel. The driver, a friendly man in a suit, introduced, himself as Keith, and opened the back door for Marcus. Inside, the car was the nicest Marcus had ever been in. Leather seats, tinted windows, even a small refrigerator with water bottles. "First time in a town car?" Keith asked with a smile, catching Marcus's expression in the rearview mirror. "That obvious, huh?" Marcus smiled back. "Not exactly my usual transportation." As they drove toward downtown Chicago, Marcus looked down at his clothes. His cleanest jeans and a button-up shirt Mrs. Chen had given him from her son's closet. Not exactly business attire, but the best he had. The car pulled up to a gleaming skyscraper in the heart of downtown. Keith escorted Marcus inside to a private elevator that required a key card. "Ms. Johnson will meet you on the top floor," Keith explained, as the elevator whisked them upward. The elevator opened directly into a reception area with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. A stylish woman with a tablet in hand approached. "Them. Mr. Williams? I'm Diana Johnson. Thank you for coming on such short notice." She led Marcus through double doors into a waiting area with comfortable chairs and more stunning views. "Can I get you anything? Water? Coffee?" "Water would be great," Marcus said, feeling out of place in the luxurious surroundings. Diana brought him a glass of water and gestured to one of the chairs. "He'll be with you shortly. He's just finishing up a call." After she left, Marcus sat, nervously looking around the office. The walls were decorated with framed jerseys and sports memorabilia. Something about them seemed familiar, but Marcus was too anxious to pay close attention. Who was behind those closed doors? A wealthy businessman? A sports team owner? And what could they possibly want with him? Marcus wiped his sweaty palms on his jeans. Whatever this was about, he hoped it would be worth the trip. He had a daughter counting on him, and right now, they needed all the help they could get. The door to the inner office opened, and Diana appeared again. "He's ready to see you now, Mr. Williams." Marcus stood, took a deep breath, and followed her toward the door, completely unprepared for who he was about to meet. Marcus stood, took a deep breath, and followed her toward the door, completely unprepared for who he was about to meet. As the door swung open, Marcus stepped into a spacious office with windows overlooking the Chicago skyline. Basketball trophies gleamed in glass cases along one wall. Framed jerseys and photos covered another. And behind a large desk stood a tall, athletically built man with a smile that Marcus had seen countless times. On television, on lilies, posters, even on cereal boxes, Michael Jordan. Marcus froze, his mouth falling open in shock. The greatest basketball player of all time, the man whose face decorated his daughter's bedroom walls, was standing right in front of him. "Mr. Williams?" Michael said, stepping forward with his hand extended. "Thank you for coming." Marcus shook Michael's hand automatically, still trying to process what was happening. You're Michael Jordan," he finally managed to say. Michael's smile widened. "Last time I checked. And you're the mechanic who changed my tire in the pouring rain and refused to take any money for it." Suddenly, everything clicked into place. The fancy car in the storm. The tall man in expensive clothes. Marcus had changed Michael Jordan's tire and hadn't even realized it. "That was you?" Marcus asked, still stunned. "I didn't recognize you in the dark, which made your kindness even more meaningful," Michael said, gesturing to a comfortable chair. "Please, have a seat." Marcus sat down, feeling like he was in some kind of dream. Diana quietly closed the door, leaving them alone. "I've been trying to find you since that night," Michael explained, sitting across from Marcus. "You disappeared before I could thank you properly." "It was just a flat tire," Marcus said. anyone would have stopped. Michael shook his head. No, they wouldn't have. Especially not in that storm. And they definitely wouldn't have refused payment. He leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. After you left, I realized I didn't even get your name. But I remembered your truck's license plate. I had my people track you down. That's impressive, Marcus said, still trying to wrap his head around the situation. My team is good at finding information, Michael said, which is how I learned about the fire and your job. His expression grew serious. I'm sorry about everything you've been going through. Marcus shifted uncomfortably in his seat. It was strange to think that Michael Jordan knew about his personal troubles. We're managing, he said simply. Tell me about yourself, Michael said. You mentioned you've been a mechanic since you were 16? The question was so normal, so genuine, that Marcus found himself relaxing slightly. He told Michael about learning the trade from his father, about working at Joe's auto shop for the past 8 years, and briefly about losing his wife to cancer. And your daughter, Diana, mentioned you have a 10-year-old? At the mention of Lily, Marcus couldn't help but smile. Lily, she's the best thing in my life. Smart, brave, and basketball crazy, actually. She has posters of you all over her bedroom wall. He paused, then added, Well, she did, before the fire. Michael nodded thoughtfully. What's your situation right now? My people gave me the basics, but I'd like to hear it from you. Marcus hesitated. It was embarrassing to lay out just how bad things had gotten, especially to someone like Michael Jordan. But something in Michael's expression, a genuine interest, without pity, made Marcus decide to be honest. We've been staying at the Moonlight Motel. Emergency assistance paid for the first week, and I pawned my tools for another week's stay. I've applied for every mechanic job in the area, but nothing yet. I have 2 interviews today, warehouse and fast food. Marcus took a deep breath. We don't have much left, to be honest. Michael listened without interrupting. When Marcus finished, he stood and walked to the window, looking out at the city. You know, when my car broke down that night, I was coming back from a charity event. The irony wasn't lost on me. There I was, having just given a speech about helping others, and suddenly I needed help myself. He turned back to face Marcus. I'm not used to feeling helpless. I don't like it. But there I was, stuck in the rain with a flat tire and no idea how to fix it. It's not that complicated, Marcus said without thinking. I could teach Lily to change a tire in 15 minutes. Michael laughed, a genuine, warm sound. I believe you could. But that night, you did more than fix my car. You reminded me of something important. What's that? Marcus asked. That real kindness doesn't ask for anything in return. Michael returned to his seat. When I tried to pay you, you said something that stuck with me. Just help someone else someday. Marcus remembered saying those words. They were something his mother used to say. That's how it's supposed to work, isn't it? Marcus said. People helping people. Michael studied him for a moment. You really believe that, don't you? Even after everything that's happened? Marcus thought about it. Despite losing Maria, despite the fire, despite every setback, did he still believe in kindness and helping others? I have to, he said finally. Otherwise, what am I teaching Lily? Michael nodded slowly, as if Marcus had confirmed something important. I believe good things happen to good people too, Michael said, echoing Maria's favorite saying so closely that Marcus felt a chill. For a moment, neither man spoke. Then Michael straightened in his chair, his expression becoming more businesslike. I want to thank you properly for your help that night, he said, Marcus started to protest, but Michael held up a hand to stop him. "I'm not finished. I've been thinking about this for days, about what kind of thank you would be meaningful." He paused. "But I need to know more about you first, your skills, your experience, what you really want to be doing." "What I want?" Marcus repeated, confused. It had been so long since anyone had asked him that. He'd been in survival mode for years, first after Maria's death, now after the fire. What did he want? "I guess I want what everyone wants," he said finally. "Security for my family. A job I'm good at. A chance to give Lily a good life." Michael smiled. "Fair enough, and very well said." He stood up and extended his hand again. "Thank you for coming today, Marcus. I won't keep you from your job interviews." Marcus stood and shook Michael's hand, feeling oddly disappointed. He'd expected... Well, he wasn't sure what he'd expected. "Diana will make sure you get back to the motel," Michael said, walking him to the door. "And Marcus, don't give up. Things have a way of working out." As Marcus followed Diana back to the elevator, he couldn't help wondering what had just happened. Had he really met Michael Jordan? And more importantly, what had been the point of it all? Little did he know, Michael Jordan was already making a phone call that would change Marcus and Lily's lives forever. Little did he know, Michael Jordan was already making a phone call that would change Marcus and Lily's lives forever. The next morning, Marcus sat on the edge of the motel bed, staring at his phone. Neither of yesterday's job interviews had gone well. The warehouse manager had hired someone with forklift experience, and the fast food restaurant wanted someone younger, though they hadn't said that directly. Lily was getting dressed for school in the bathroom. Marcus could hear her humming a tune, something she did when she was trying to stay positive. She was so much like her mother that way. His phone rang, startling him. The screen showed Diana Johnson. His heart beat faster as he answered. "Hello, Mr. Williams. This is Diana Johnson from Mr. Jordan's office." "Yes, hello," Marcus said, trying to keep his voice calm so Lily wouldn't hear. "Mr. Jordan would like to offer you a position," Diana said, getting straight to the point. "Are you available to discuss the details today?" Marcus almost dropped the phone. "A position? What kind of position?" "Mr. Jordan owns a substantial collection of vehicles, both luxury and vintage cars. He needs a trustworthy, skilled mechanic to maintain them. Based on your experience and background, he believes you would be perfect for the role." Marcus couldn't believe what he was hearing. "He wants me to work on his car collection?" "Yes. The position includes a very competitive salary, full benefits, and..." Diana paused briefly. "Temporary housing in a company apartment until you can find a suitable place of your own." Marcus sat down hard on the bed. Housing, benefits, a real job doing what he was good at. "Mr. Williams, are you still there?" "Yes," Marcus managed to say. "Yes, I'm here. This is unexpected." "I understand. Would you like to visit the facility today? See what you'd be working with?" "Absolutely," Marcus said, his mind racing. "What time?" "I can send Keith to pick you up at 11, if that works for you." After hanging up, Marcus sat in stunned silence. Lily came out of the bathroom wearing her school clothes. "Dad, are you okay? You look weird." Marcus looked at his daughter and broke into a smile. "I'm more than okay, Lily Bear. I just got offered a job interview, a really good one." "That's great." Lily hugged him. "I told you things would get better." Marcus walked Lily to the bus stop, his mind still processing Diana's call. Could this be real? Why would Michael Jordan offer him a job after one meeting? It seemed too good to be true. At exactly 11, Keith arrived in the same black car. This time, he drove Marcus to an industrial area of Chicago, pulling up to a large, modern building with no signage except for the street number. Diana met him at the entrance. "Thank you for coming, Mr. Williams. This is where Mr. Jordan keeps his collection." She used a key card to open the door, revealing what looked like the world's most exclusive auto shop. The space was immaculate. Polished concrete floors, state-of-the-art equipment, and most impressively, 24 cars arranged in perfect rows. Marcus couldn't help but stare. There were classic Ferraris, vintage Porsches, custom Mercedes, and even a few rare American muscle cars. Each one was in pristine condition. "This is incredible," Marcus breathed. "Mr. Jordan adds to his collection regularly," Diana explained. "He needs someone who understands these vehicles and can maintain them properly." A middle-aged man in crisp overalls approached them. "You must be Marcus. I'm Henry, head of maintenance here." They shook hands, and Henry gave Marcus a quick tour of the facility, explaining the climate control system, the diagnostic equipment, and the maintenance schedule. "Mr. Jordan said you've been a mechanic since you were 16?" Henry asked. "That's right," Marcus nodded. "My dad taught me. Then I went to trade school. I've worked on all kinds of cars over the years." Henry gestured to a classic 1963 Corvette Stingray. "Mind showing me what you know? This one's been making a strange noise when it idles." For the next 20 minutes, Marcus examined the Corvette, quickly identifying a vacuum leak in the intake manifold. Henry watched with an approving smile. "You've got a good eye," Henry said, "and good ears, too." When they finished, Diana led Marcus to a small office where she explained the details of the job offer. The salary was more than double what he'd made at Joe's auto shop, with health insurance, retirement benefits, and paid vacation. "And the housing?" Marcus asked. It was the most important part for him and Lily. "A 2-bedroom apartment in a building Mr. Jordan owns. It's fully furnished and available immediately. You can stay there rent-free for 3 months while you get settled." Marcus took a deep breath. It was everything they needed, appearing like magic just when things seemed hopeless. "Why me?" he asked finally. "There must be hundreds of better mechanics in Chicago." Diana smiled. "Mr. Jordan values character as much as skill. You helped him without knowing who he was, and you refused payment. That made an impression." On the drive back to the motel, Marcus called Coach Turner. "Coach? It's Marcus Williams. I've got some good news." As he shared the unexpected turn of events, Marcus felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Real hope. When he hung up, he looked out the car window at the city passing by. Somewhere out there, Maria was smiling. Good things happen to good people. Maybe she'd been right all along. What Marcus didn't know was that this job offer was just the beginning of Michael Jordan's plan. What Marcus didn't know was that this job offer was just the beginning of Michael Jordan's plan. 2 weeks later, Marcus unlocked the door to apartment 7B and stepped aside as Lily rushed in ahead of him. "Dad, it's huge!" she exclaimed, running from room to room in excitement. "And there's a basketball hoop in the second bedroom." Marcus followed more slowly, taking in their new home. The 2-bedroom apartment was in a well-maintained building in a nice Chicago neighborhood. Though Diana had described it as basic, it was nicer than anywhere Marcus and Lily had ever lived. The living room had comfortable furniture, the kitchen was modern with new appliances, and the bedrooms were spacious and bright. Someone had even stocked the refrigerator with food. "Can I have the room with the basketball hoop?" Lily asked, bouncing on her toes. "Of course," Marcus smiled. "Just don't practice your jump shots after bedtime." They spent the rest of the day unpacking their few belongings and exploring the neighborhood. There was a park 2 blocks away with basketball courts, and Lily's new school was within walking distance. "Do you think they'll let me join their basketball team even though the season already started?" Lily asked as they walked back to the apartment. "We can ask," Marcus promised. "But remember, you'll need to focus on your studies too. New school means catching up." The next morning, Marcus started his new job. Henry showed him around the garage more thoroughly, introduced him to the other staff members, and outlined his responsibilities. By lunchtime, Marcus was elbow-deep in the engine of a classic Mustang, feeling more at home than he had in weeks. The work was fascinating. Each vehicle in Michael's collection had its own maintenance schedule and special requirements. Marcus found himself learning something new every day. Henry was a patient teacher, sharing his knowledge about the rare and exotic cars. "Mr. Jordan doesn't just collect these for show," Henry explained one afternoon. "He actually drives them. That's why they need to be in perfect condition all the time." Life fell into a new rhythm. Marcus would drop Lily off at school, work at the garage until evening, then pick her up from basketball practice or the after-school program. Weekends were for exploring Chicago and catching up on homework. Lily had been welcomed onto her new school's basketball team, where her skills quickly made her a valuable player. She made friends easily, as she always had. "Coach says I'm one of the best point guards she's ever seen," Lily told Marcus proudly after her first game. "She says I have natural talent." 1 month into their new life, Michael Jordan stopped by the garage to check on his cars. Marcus was changing the oil in a Ferrari when Henry called him over. "Mr. Jordan wants to see how you're settling in," Henry said. Michael greeted Marcus with a warm handshake. "Henry tells me you're doing excellent work," he said, glancing around at the impeccably maintained vehicles. "It's a dream job, sir," Marcus replied honestly. "I can't thank you enough. How's the apartment working out? And your daughter, Lily, right?" "The apartment is perfect, and Lily loves her new school and the basketball team." Michael's eyes lit up. "She plays basketball?" "Since she was 5, Marcus said proudly. "She's actually pretty good. Her room is covered in posters of you." "Well, it was before the fire," Michael smiled. "I'd like to meet her sometime." 2 days later, Michael surprised them by stopping by the garage just as Marcus was finishing work. Lily was sitting in the small break room doing homework while waiting for Marcus. When Michael walked in, Lily's eyes grew as wide as saucers. She froze, her pencil halfway to her paper, staring at her basketball hero. "You must be Lily," Michael said, extending his hand. "I'm Michael Jordan." "I know who you are," Lily whispered, shaking his hand in awe. "You're the greatest basketball player ever." Michael laughed. "Some people might say that. Your dad tells me you play too." Lily nodded, finding her voice. "I'm a point guard. I'm working on my 3-pointers." "That takes practice," Michael said. "Show me your form." There was a mini basketball and hoop in the break room. Lily, still slightly in shock, took the ball and demonstrated her shooting technique. Michael watched carefully, then offered a few suggestions. "Try holding your elbow in like this," he demonstrated, "and follow through with your wrist more." Lily tried it his way and made a perfect shot. Her face lit up with joy. It worked. She exclaimed. "Practice that form every day," Michael advised. "Muscle memory is key." Before leaving, Michael handed Lily a signed basketball. "Keep working hard," he told her, "in basketball and school." For days afterward, Lily couldn't stop talking about meeting Michael Jordan. "He gave me tips on my shooting form," she would tell anyone who would listen. "Michael Jordan!" As the weeks passed, Marcus excelled at his job. The apartment felt more like home. Lily thrived at school. But something nagged at Marcus, a feeling that this was all too good to be true. One day, he overheard Michael talking with Diana near the office. "The interview is set for next week," Michael was saying. "Time to move on to the next phase." "Are you sure he's ready?" Diana asked. "He's perfect for it," Michael replied. "Better than I expected, actually." They noticed Marcus and quickly changed the subject, leaving him wondering what they had been discussing. Was his job temporary? Was Michael planning something else? That night, after Lily was asleep, Marcus sat at the kitchen table reviewing their finances. He had been saving as much as possible from each paycheck, preparing for the day when this dream might end. The 3-month free housing period was almost up, and while Marcus could now afford rent, he worried about what other changes might be coming. "Don't borrow trouble," Maria used to tell him when he worried too much. "Deal with today's problems today." Marcus smiled at the memory. He closed his budget spreadsheet and went to check on Lily. She was sleeping peacefully, her signed basketball on the shelf above her bed, next to the repaired teddy bear, the only survivor from their old life. Whatever happened next, Marcus was determined to be ready. This job had given them a second chance, and he wasn't going to waste it. Little did he know that Michael Jordan was indeed planning something bigger, something that would not only change Marcus and Lily's lives, but the lives of many others as well. Little did he know that Michael Jordan was indeed planning something bigger, something that would not only change Marcus and Lily's lives, but the lives of many others as well. 3 months after starting his job, Marcus received a text from Diana. "Mr. Jordan would like to see you in his office tomorrow at 10 a.m. Marcus read the message several times, anxiety creeping in. Was this about the next phase he'd overheard them discussing? Was his time working for Michael Jordan coming to an end? That evening, as Marcus helped Lily with her math homework, his phone rang again. "Marcus, it's Diana. I wanted to explain about tomorrow's meeting," she said. "ESPN is doing a special feature on Mr. Jordan's charitable work. He'd like you to participate in a short interview." "An interview? On television?" Marcus asked, surprised. "Why me?" "The segment is about unexpected acts of kindness. Your story, helping Mr. Jordan with the flat tire, is perfect. Would you be comfortable doing this?" Marcus hesitated. He was a private person and didn't like being the center of attention. But he also felt he owed Michael a great deal. "Okay," he agreed finally. "What do I need to know?" "Just be yourself and tell your story," Diana assured him. "The interview won't take more than 30 minutes. The next morning, Marcus arrived at Michael's office building feeling nervous. Diana met him in the lobby and led him to a conference room where cameras and lights had been set up. A woman with a clipboard introduced herself as the producer. "We're so glad you could join us, Mr. Williams," she said. "Mr. Jordan will be here shortly." Marcus sat awkwardly in the chair indicated, trying not to stare at the cameras. A makeup artist dabbed powder on his face to reduce shine, making him feel even more out of place. When Michael entered, the room immediately felt different, charged with energy. He greeted everyone warmly, then came to sit in the chair beside Marcus. "Nervous?" Michael asked quietly. "Terrified," Marcus admitted. Michael chuckled. "Just pretend the cameras aren't there. We're just having a conversation, like in my office that first day." The interviewer, a polished woman in a red blazer, took her seat across from them. "We'll begin with some questions for Mr. Jordan, then bring you into the conversation, Mr. Williams," she explained. The cameras started rolling. The interviewer asked Michael about his various charitable projects, his philosophy on giving back, and his plans for future philanthropy. Then she turned to Marcus. "Mr. Williams, "Tell us about the night you met Michael Jordan," she said. Marcus took a deep breath and described the rainy night, the flat tire, and stopping to help. "I didn't recognize him in the storm. I was just helping someone who needed it." "And you refused payment?" the interviewer prompted. "Yes. My mother always taught me to help others without expecting anything in return," Marcus explained. "My late wife believed the same thing. We've tried to teach our daughter that kindness matters." The interviewer seemed especially interested in this part. "So you helped Mr. Jordan, refused payment, and then what happened?" "I went home," Marcus said simply. "I didn't think about it again until much later." He carefully avoided mentioning the fire, his job loss, or his current position working for Michael. Diana had coached him to keep those details private for now. "Would you do it again, knowing what you know now?" the interviewer asked. Marcus nodded without hesitation. "Of course, anyone would." "Not anyone," Michael interjected. "That's what makes Marcus's story special." After the interview, the crew packed up their equipment. Michael thanked Marcus for participating. "You did great," he said. "Thank you for not mentioning your job or how I helped you. I appreciate your discretion." Marcus had been wondering about that instruction. "Can I ask why? It seems like the kind of thing that would make a good story. How you helped us after." "The fire." Michael considered the question. "Because this isn't about me helping you. It's about something bigger." "The next phase I overheard you discussing with Diana?" Marcus asked before he could stop himself. Michael looked surprised, then smiled. "You heard that, huh? Don't worry. It's nothing bad. In fact, it could be very good, but I'm not ready to discuss it yet." As Diana walked Marcus out, his curiosity got the better of him. "Diana, why was I chosen for this job? I know there are better mechanics out there." Diana smiled mysteriously. "Mr. Jordan sees something in you, Marcus. Something special." "What does that mean?" Marcus pressed. "It means be patient," she replied. "As Mr. Jordan would say, the story isn't over yet." Back at the garage, Marcus threw himself into his work, trying not to worry about what might be coming next. Whatever Michael Jordan was planning, Marcus would face it when the time came. For now, he had a good job, a safe home for Lily, and a second chance at building a stable life. That was enough, or at least, that's what Marcus told himself. But deep down, he couldn't shake the feeling that everything was about to change again, or at least that's what Marcus told himself. But deep down, he couldn't shake the feeling that everything was about to change again. 6 months to the day after the apartment fire, Marcus received another call from Diana. "Mr. Jordan would like to see you in his office this afternoon at 2, she said. "He said it's important." Marcus's stomach tightened. "Is everything okay? Have I done something wrong?" "Not at all," Diana assured him. "In fact, quite the opposite. This is a good meeting, Marcus." When Marcus arrived at the familiar office building, Diana was waiting with a warm smile. "He's ready for you," she said, leading him to Michael's office. Michael was standing by the window, looking out at the Chicago skyline. He turned when Marcus entered, greeting him with a handshake. "Thanks for coming, Marcus. Please, have a seat." Once they were both seated, Michael leaned forward. "First, I want you to know that your work on my cars has been outstanding. Henry says you're the best mechanic he's ever worked with." "Thank you," Marcus said, relaxing slightly. "I love the job. I know you do. And it's yours for as long as you want it." Michael paused. "But I'm hoping you might consider a different position as well." Marcus's confusion must have shown on his face because Michael smiled and continued. "Remember that ESPN interview you did? It aired last week." "It did?" Marcus hadn't even known when it would be televised. Michael nodded. The response has been incredible. Your story, helping a stranger in the rain, refusing payment, saying, "Just help someone else someday," it resonated with people. He pressed a button on his desk, and a screen lowered from the ceiling. Michael picked up a remote and played a compilation of news segments and social media posts. Marcus watched in amazement as commentators discussed his simple act of kindness. Viewers had written in with their own stories of unexpected help in difficult times. The hashtag Chadrus Just Help Someone Else was trending. "I don't understand," Marcus said when the video ended. "All this because I changed a tire?" "Because you showed genuine kindness without knowing who I was or expecting anything in return," Michael corrected. And it got me thinking. Michael stood up and walked around his desk, sitting in the chair next to Marcus rather than across from him. "For years, I've been looking for a way to make a real difference beyond just writing checks to existing charities. I wanted to create something meaningful, something that would help ordinary people facing extraordinary challenges. But I couldn't figure out exactly what that should be until I met you." Marcus listened, still confused about where this was heading. "After our first meeting, I learned about the fire, how you lost everything overnight, how you were doing everything right, working hard, caring for your daughter, helping others, and still ended up in that motel with nowhere to go. And I realized there are thousands of people like you across the country. Good people who hit hard times through no fault of their own." Michael stood again, too energetic to remain seated. "I'm starting a foundation," he announced. "The Good Things Happen Foundation." Marcus felt a jolt at hearing Maria's favorite saying. The foundation will provide immediate help to working families who experience sudden disasters. Fires, floods, medical emergencies, anything that can wipe out a stable life overnight, Michael explained. "We'll offer housing assistance, job placement, education support, and a path back to stability." "That sounds amazing," Marcus said sincerely. "Here's where you come in," Michael continued. "I want you to be the first director of the foundation." Marcus stared at him in shock. "Me? But I'm a mechanic. I don't know anything about running a charity. You know what it's like to lose everything. You know what people in that situation need. And you have something that can't be taught: genuine compassion and integrity. But we'll hire experienced people to handle the legal and financial aspects," Michael assured him. "Your job would be to identify families who need help, connect them with resources, and make sure they're getting what they actually need, not just what some bureaucracy thinks they should have." Marcus struggled to process this offer. It was so far from anything he'd ever imagined for himself. "The ESPN interview was just the beginning," Michael explained. "Your story has already raised millions in donations from people who were moved by what you did. Companies are pledging support. This is happening, Marcus. The question is, will you be part of it?" "I don't know what to say," Marcus admitted. "This is overwhelming." Michael smiled understandingly. "I know it's a lot to take in, but I believe you're exactly the right person for this." Marcus thought about all the families like his, people who worked hard but could be devastated by one disaster, people who needed a helping hand to get back on their feet. "Can I ask you something?" Marcus said finally. "Why did my story affect you so much? You must have people helping you all the time." Michael was quiet for a moment, considering the question. "What you don't know," he said finally, "is that when you stopped to help me that night, I was in a dark place personally. Despite all my success, I was feeling disconnected from real people, from what matters." He looked out the window at the city below. Fame creates a bubble. People either want something from you or they treat you like you're not quite human. But you had no idea who I was. You just saw someone who needed help, and you helped. Simple as that. Michael turned back to Marcus. When you refused payment and said, "Just help someone else someday," it hit me hard. It reminded me of where I came from, of what my parents taught me about helping others. It made me want to do better, be better. Marcus was moved by this unexpected vulnerability from someone so successful. By helping you after the fire, Michael continued, I found purpose again. And now, with this foundation, we can help thousands of people. We can create something that will outlast both of us. He extended his hand to Marcus. So what do you say? Will you help me help others? In that moment, Marcus thought of Maria, of her unwavering belief that good things happen to good people, of how she would have loved this opportunity to make a difference. Yes, Marcus said, shaking Michael's hand. I'd be honored. Michael's face broke into a wide smile. That's exactly what I hoped you'd say. As they discussed the details of the IU new foundation, Marcus could hardly believe how much his life had changed in 6 months, from losing everything in the fire to being offered the chance to help others avoid the same fate. When the meeting ended, Marcus called Lily's school to let them know he'd be picking her up early. This news couldn't wait. As he stood on the sidewalk waiting for his daughter, Marcus looked up at the clear blue sky. You were right all along, Maria, he whispered. Good things really do happen to good people. Lily bounded out of the school doors, her face lighting up when she saw him. Dad, what are you doing here? Is everything okay? Marcus smiled, his heart full. Everything is better than okay, Lily Bear. I have something amazing to tell you. As they walked hand in hand through the busy Chicago streets, Marcus began to share the story of Michael's offer and the new foundation. Lily listened with wide eyes, squeezing his hand tightly. So we'll be helping other families who lose their homes? She asked. That's right. Helping them get back on their feet, just like Michael helped us. Lily thought about this for a moment, then smiled up at him. Just help someone else someday, she said, quoting what Marcus had told Michael that rainy night. Marcus nodded, marveling at how a simple act of kindness on a stormy road had set in motion a chain of events that would touch countless lives. Sometimes, the smallest gestures create the biggest ripples. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe. We'd love to hear where you're listening from. Share your location in the comments below. For another inspiring story that will move you just as much, click the video appearing on your screen right now.